have the slide up.
I do too. Okay. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Brett Augustine. I'm a business advisor for North Central Texas Small Business Development Centers, leading provider for assistance for small businesses. We are grant funded, which allows us to offer services at no cost. Today, we have our introduction to QuickBooks Online Payroll Part 2 with Stacy Kildal and Bryce Forney. If you missed Part 1, I put in our chat a quick link to go back in time and see the Part 1 after you've seen this, so you can put them both together and have the information. We're glad all of you could join us today. And with that, I would like to ask Stacy and Bryce if you would please introduce yourselves and say thank you so much for being with us.
Sure. 1 second. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and get everything all, get my ducks here in a row. So that, well, Bryce, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself while I get myself together here.
Okay. My name is Bryce Forney, and I am a CPA tax preparer in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm delighted to be here today. Most of what I'm going to be doing today is staying out of Stacy's way.
My name
should
is
we know
Stacy.
about you?
My name is Stacy Kildal, and I own and operate Kildal Services, LLC. I'm located in White Lake, Michigan, and I have been been using QuickBooks Online since QuickBooks, I should say, since about 1998, 99. And I have owned my business. Technically, the LLC was formed in 2005, but I was doing it just as a sole prop contractor for about 2 years prior to that. So I've been doing it for going on 20 years. I just am realizing as I'm speaking and saying this, so I've been doing this for a really long time. And I've been a member of Intuit's Trainer and Writer Network since 2005. Before we get started, just a couple, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Paula and Lori and Brett for asking us to do this. I want to thank all of you who are attending or watching the recording later. Thank you for spending the time with us. I want to preface by saying Part 1 and Part 2, there is a lot of information. It is very fast-paced, and don't hesitate to take notes or have to go back and rewatch the YouTube video. Having done payroll literally since I was in actuality, since I was about 13. Payroll is really complex and there's a lot to it. So we do cover a lot of content in this very finite amount of time. So we ask that you keep any questions related to the content that we're talking about. We're going to have some time for Q&A, but while I am talking your ear off, Bryce will be he is going to be monitoring the questions in the chat. If you guys have any questions as we're going through, please don't hesitate to put those in. We want to make sure that we answer all of the questions that you guys have as they come through. So I'm going to turn my camera off so we can really focus on content. There is a test drive, and maybe Bryce can put in the chat the link to the test drive. There's a link to a QuickBooks Online Plus version as well as an advanced. I think, most clients, most small businesses, I have 2 that are using QuickBooks Online Advanced. Most of them are using QuickBooks Online Essentials or Plus. So, but that's what this test drive is. The test drive is definitely QuickBooks Online Plus. You don't need to worry about the accountant gear icon sample company. It's really just that gear, the link that Bryce is going to put in there. The other thing you can do is just go to the Googler and type in QuickBooks Online Test Drive, and you'll find the link that way. So in Part 1, we covered how to set up QBOP, QuickBooks Online Payroll, as well as adding employees, setting up different payment methods like using a paper check or direct deposit. We are going to, and then just working with the product in and of itself. And today we're going to be talking about reports and some end of period activities, and then some advanced options. my notes here that say that you can supercharge QuickBooks Online Payroll. I don't know about that. I just think that there's just
You
some
really
more.
just want to make it compliant.
Right, yeah. Really, I wouldn't worry about supercharging your payroll. I think it's really mostly just about, like Bryce said, just being in compliance. So we're gonna take a look at some of the basic payroll reports, and I may be flipping from the slides over to QBO. I do have that open so I can show you some of these reports. So there are some basic payroll reports. If you have QuickBooks Online and you do not have any payroll reports in your payroll in the report center, the reason is because you may not have an active payroll subscription. In order to get these payroll reports, you have to turn on the payroll feature and have an active payroll subscription. So these are just some of the reports that we're going to cover. I will go through the slides and then we'll show you how to access those. So the first one that we're looking at is this payroll by summary report. This report is going to show you any employees across the top. And actually what's kind of cool about this is you can look at it two different ways, and I'm going to show you that. But it looks at, it's going to show employees with all of their earning items, their taxes and deductions, as well as the employer taxes and contributions. You can also add columns for the number of hours, which I just had to do. I went up north snowmobiling to the Upper Peninsula in Michigan this weekend, and on the way back yesterday, we were driving home, and I worked and just caught up on all my emails while my husband was driving. And one of the things that I had to do for one of my clients was pull a payroll report, a summary report that did show all of the hours for January, because they're switching medical health insurance providers, and they need to know how many employees worked less than 25 hours a week and how many worked more than 25 hours a week in January. So you can.
And I would say if you only know one report within payroll, this is the one.
This is the one, yeah. And I'm going to show it to you because it really has a lot of information. So you can filter. So like I said, you can add columns for the number of hours, the hourly rate. You can filter for specific date range. You can filter for inactive employees or even just one employee. If you have different work locations, you can filter for that, as well as different workers' comp classes if you're using QBO to track workers' comp. I know that there is an option to have workers' comp insurance through calculated, and then it's a pay-as-you-go system through AP, and I think it's AP Indigo. So you may have those comp classes turned on. The total gross pay that you see is going to include all of the earnings, regular wages, commissions, bonuses, tips, as well as any additions like maybe some reimbursements. Adjusted gross pay, that is going to be the gross pay minus any pre-tax deductions, which might include, you know, an employee contribution to a 401k plan. The net pay is the amount that is paid to the employee after taxes and any other deductions. So they may have, you know, the deduction for 401k that I just mentioned. They may have, garnishments for, you know, maybe court-ordered garnishment for child support or something like that. And then the employer taxes and contributions section of the report, that's going to show the amount accrued during the period covered by the report, regardless of whether they were paid or not. So every time an employer does a paycheck, they have certain expenses that they have to pay, whether it is, unemployment tax. If the state has it, it may be, like you can see here, California has a couple different types of taxes. In the state of Michigan, we just have Michigan withholding, and some states don't have they don't have any state withholding, but that's an employee paid. But we also, we just have one unemployment rate. So you can see the state of California has, what is the ETT, Bryce?
Employment training tax. It's a very small tax, and it maxes out at $7,000 of wages. So it just kind of it's a very small item.
Yeah, and we don't have that in Michigan. We just have the unemployment insurance. And so then obviously it's going to show any Social Security, federal unemployment, as well as any Medicare. So those are all, you know, the Social Security and Medicare, those are all, you match what the employee pays, the employer matches, and then the employer pays all of the federal unemployment and all of the state unemployment taxes. Let's see, I don't think there's anything else I want to mention about that report. The employee payroll summary report. This report lists all of the paychecks for a specific time period. It does give a net to gross information for all of the employees, as well as employer taxes and contributions. So it's very similar to the report that we just saw, except that it's listing, you can see each paycheck. So it's not giving, you know, it's just giving more of like a summary for what the paychecks are, whereas the other one gave a lot more detail. This is going to include total cost of the payroll for any given date range that you choose. It includes the number of hours worked in that pay period. So you can see here, you know, we've got 3 checks for Elizabeth Mason that were dated. I would say the other 2 look like they're adjustments.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, I'm hoping so, because all it does is show employer taxes on them. So you can, again, you can filter this by, you know, date range, by employees, and then by workers' comp class as well. And if you have different locations, you can also filter that as well. So I'm going to go into QuickBooks and I'm going to show you both of these reports. So for those of you who haven't watched or weren't here to watch part 1, this is a demo account. It does have payroll turned on. However, it's, I mean, you can see here we've got a lot of past due taxes because we're not really running real payrolls. We're not really paying taxes because this is not a real company. So this is our payroll center. And if I go down to reports, and actually I'm gonna do, I'm gonna switch to this. What I'm, the way I'm viewing it is how an accountant user looks at it. And what I'm gonna do here is switch it to how a user, an admin user or a regular user would see that. So I'm going over to reports, and I, as you can see, you can collapse all of these different sections. And I'm gonna kind of get to the points and get down here where I have employees. Right, so this is just employees, but this is not where we're going to find that report. We want to go down to our payroll section. One of the things that you can do with these reports is that you can show the you can favorite them by clicking, you know, the star. If you want to click on the star, so if I look at that payroll summary by employee, right? If I look at payroll summary by employee and I favorite that, and then I look at the payroll summary, which were the 2 that we just looked at, they're going to show up here in my favorites. So you can see them right here. If I want to remove them, I can just, you know, take the star away and they'll go away. So if I look at my payroll summary by employee, you can see it's going to give you some tips, and you can scroll through these and say, okay, I'm done. One of the things that's not on the slide and why I wanted to show this is if I look at, you know, maybe I look at last year and I apply, you can see I only paid Liz Mason and Greg Schneider, and this is showing the, this is a little bit different than what we saw before, where we saw the employees in rows. Here we're seeing them in columns. And so if you click this little button here, you can toggle between seeing them in rows and then seeing or columns. We can also customize this report as well. And we can say, I want to filter it by all of my employees. If I'm doing any class tracking, I can do that. How do I want to group the employees? I can say, I want to, or group the report. I can say, I want to group it by, you know, quarterly if I want. And I can choose to just show totals. And so if I make these changes and customize this report a little bit, and then I click run report, you can see it gives a little bit, it looks a little bit different. It's just saying, hey, you know, we only had payroll in 2 quarters of last year, the 2nd and 3rd quarter, and then it's just going to show the hours. It's going to show the gross pay. So you don't have to toggle. I know that that screenshot showed that there was a a place to toggle the hours and the rates, you know, or the hours on and off, but it's by default. It's been updated since that screenshot. I can choose to share this. By that, it's going to say, hey, do you want to export this to Excel, or would you like to print and save the PDF? Now, the other report that I showed you on the slide was just the payroll summary report. And if we go over here to our payroll summary and we open that up, you can see here, I'm going to filter this by last year again, click apply. It's going to show this pretty much the same information that we had. It's going to show us our totals for our gross pay, all of that stuff, but it's giving it to us specifically by each check. It's going to list each check. I can also customize this if I want, and I can say, hey, I want to see the, you know, the pay period. There's not much customization. It's just asking, like, what do you want to see on this? You know, what columns do you want to show up? So if this were, I were really pulling this report, I know that this client doesn't have any pre-tax deductions. They don't have any other pays. So what I would probably, and there's no company contribution for 401k. So what I would probably do is I would remove these, because that to me is just, it's kind of static and it's really not necessary. And then I would give this report, the report to my client if they wanted to see that. So those are just those two reports. Anything I am forgetting to say about those, Bryce?
No, I don't think so. I mean, those are great because you get, well, I mean, I guess I'll add that the neat thing about the payroll report is it shows not only the amount paid to the employee, but also the employer taxes.
Yeah,
So
which
you
is
get
right here.
that total cost.
Yep.
And
And
that's
these
really
are
valuable so that you can very quickly say, okay, I know that for every $10 I pay a team member, I've got another $2 in payroll taxes. Employment
exactly.
payroll tax.
And that's really helpful if you're trying to determine what your budget is for hiring somebody. Do you, you know, you can kind of look at, well, what is it going to cost me to hire somebody? Am I going to be able to afford, you know, a full-time person or a part-time person, or whatever, and compare that. So we actually pull these reports quite often and look at that. So to explain to my clients what they have going on. The other thing I want to point out is, going back to this, the settings are what we call sticky. So you saw that I said I want to look at last year and I wanted it by rows. And so when I left and I came back, it remembered those settings and it stayed, you know, it gave me the same report that I was looking at the last time. So those are sticky. So there are some other reports that are technically referred to as advanced.
Yeah, that's kind of a strong term,
I don't
advanced.
know that, I don't think that they are advanced. I think advanced, especially for someone who's new to payroll, I think it might be a little bit intimidating.
Yeah,
But
less common maybe would be more appropriate term.
I would also maybe call them special reports as opposed to advanced reports. So there's a lot of different information that's
Yeah,
involved.
that's really good. Special.
Yeah,
That's what they should be called.
it should be called that. But there's a lot of information that is involved, like a lot of data that's involved in calculating payroll, employee costs, taxation, deductions, contributions. And with some of the reports that I'm going to show you, you guys can use all of that information to improve forecasting for your business, improve efficiency. Tax and wage summary reports, these can be broken down by the types of tax, the wages that are subject to that tax, excess wages, which are over limits. So you mentioned that the ETT, the employee training tax, maxed out at $7,000. So that's what we're talking about with excess wages. Anything over $7,000. Taxable wages, as well as the amount of tax that the employer owes and pays. So for instance, you might want to run a report to see if all of the employees have reached their unemployment rate limit, right? Which in the state of Michigan, I think it's 9,000, it might be 9,500. So that means that unemployment is only taxed for that first amount. You only pay the tax on the first $7,000 for the training tax in California, and anything over $7,000, you're not paying that unemployment tax. So, or that training tax, I should say. So you might want to look at a report that tells you which one of your employees have reached that rate limit. And also a tax liability report is going to give you a list of all the taxes and tells you the taxable amount per payroll, the tax paid, as well as the tax owed. You can also run reports on employee details to see all of the employee contact info, pay rates, social security number, W-4 information. Those reports can be run for specific employees or for all employees. I will say, after what I watched one of my clients experience this year, I've never had this happen in almost 20 years of running my business. I had one employee or one client who had an employee come to them at the end of the year and say, I gave you the wrong social security number. I put the wrong social number on my W-4. And so they had to go back and refile all of the unemployment reports for the state of Michigan, and then they had a separate employee come and say, oh, you know what? I didn't put my last name down. He has a hyphenated last name and he only put the one section of the hyphenation on. So that employee report that has all those employee details, that might be a good report to pull when you have a new employee, and you can filter it by that specific employee and say, okay, we got you entered in our system. Can you please verify all of this information before we run our first payroll, or at least before we file the first set of quarterly returns, and make sure we have everything correct. So all of these default reports, they can be customized to give the required detail. And here's the thing, customized reports can't be saved. I'm going to show you a little workaround, because every report and every transaction in QBO has its own unique URL. And what I'm going to do is show you how to bookmark the reports on your browser, so that you don't have to do the customization every time.
Yeah, because we can save customized reports in any other context, balance sheet, profit and loss.
Yeah.
But with payroll, it's like its own separate island of reporting.
So you can, if my client or Bryce's client, or if you as the employer, if you are using class tracking, you may want to see payroll costs for different classes. And so class tracking can be used for different departments or different lines of business. So I have a client who has 2 different auto shops, and because he was using QuickBooks Desktop before he converted to QBO, or I converted him to QBO, I should say. QuickBooks Desktop does not have location tracking. If I were to do the whole thing over again, I probably would set up the different shops with location tracking, but as it is, we have it set up for class tracking. And so he has a different class set up for each one of his locations. He's got a shop in Pinckney, Michigan, and a shop in Stockbridge. And so for the employees, you can assign one class per employee. So every time the 3 guys over in Stockbridge get paid, that class for Stockbridge is applied. And so he can pull and filter, he can pull these reports of P&L by class, and he can look and see what was his income for that location, what were his expenses, and by assigning a class to the employees, we can now see the payroll costs for that class tracking as well, for those classes also. So when we do this setup, I'm gonna just show you how to do, whoops, click the wrong link, sorry about that. Let me get back to my little slideshow here. Sorry. Oh, today is gonna be one of those days, I feel like, where my technology is not.
I'm sure this never happens to anyone else.
I just don't. I used to really sweat it when
It's a good, quick, rapid recall of what we just went over.
Yeah.
Yes, and it just reminds us that we're all human. Don't worry about it.
That's right.
I used to really sweat this stuff and get really upset, and now I'm just like, ugh, you know what? I did that thing again that I do in every webinar. So when we set up class tracking for wage expenses, there's a couple different steps. So you're going to go to, we're going to go to our gear icon, and then we want to select our payroll settings from the Your Company column. This is going to open up another menu. And so from here, we're going to find the section that says accounting. We're going to, it says, you know, the instructions, if you look them up, will say you have to click the pencil, but you don't. You can just click really anywhere. Maybe. Okay. This is one of those places where it's not going to do that. So this is where we're going to set this up. So you can see I've told QuickBooks the checking account that I want to use, the wage expenses. One of the things that's kind of neat is when you're setting up wage expense accounts for the accounting part of it, and I know I was talking about class tracking, but I just wanted to point this out. I can have all of the employees, everybody's wages go into one payroll account, or I can say, hey, each employee has a different wage account. So for why would you do this? So I have an account called owner salary, which is different because we want to track that for my specific, and I'm going to just talk about my one of my auto shops. Because he wants to see his salary separate from everybody that works for him. So we have this, we have it set up this way where each employee's wages are posted to their own expense account. Most of my other clients just have post to one expense account. And then the other option is you can say each employee's wage is posted to a different type of account. So whereas the second option, it was saying all of this, it doesn't matter what kind of wage or what kind of pay type or payroll item this employee is getting paid, I want you to put it all in one account. In this situation, we're saying, okay, for this, if somebody has salary, I want it to go to this specific expense account. If they have this item, and so it won't matter what person. So this is assigning expense account by payroll item type versus employee. This is assigning payroll wage expense by employee, and this is just saying, you know what, everybody is all in the same account. So if I go back to the accounting section here, I want to look at class tracking. So you can see with the class tracking, what we've set up is every time Liz gets paid, we want her payroll expenses, her wages, the taxes, anything that is on her paycheck, we want that assigned to the class of new construction. Greg does all of our remodel work. Hold on. That's just my dash line there. Jack Nicholson, who we added before, we're gonna give him, you know, we'll say that he's also does remodeling, and then Dan is overhead. So maybe he's an admin or he's an estimator or whatever, and then we can just continue. So the thing with class tracking is, even though you can assign on a transaction multiple classes per that transaction, when it comes to payroll, you can only assign one class per employee. So you can't say, if they're tracking time and they're using the, you know, the hours in, you know, the time tracking that's built into QBO, and they put in a class for it, it doesn't matter. That's not going to flow into payroll. So if Greg puts in hours and he worked 20 hours and instead of remodel he put, or overhead he put you know, new construction, it's not going to matter. When we pay him, it's all going to be assigned to whatever class we have set up here in our payroll settings. This overrides anything that's used on time tracking. So going back to the slide, the options are saying I don't use classes for payroll transactions. I use the same class for all employees. I use different classes for different employees, or and so when you the first use case, this I don't use classes for payroll transaction is going to be the default setting. And so if we were to go back here and do that, you can see I don't use classes for payroll tracking. I use the same class for all employees, but in this case, we've assigned different classes for different employees. Anything I'm missing on that, Bryce?
I was just going to add that one of the ways that you can use the different accounts per employee is for S corporations, officer wages are reported on a separate line than other salaries and wages. So that's going to be important for tax return.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we have that set up for my shop for the owner, Mike. All of his is separate. One, because he wants to see it, and two, because it's really easy for his tax preparer to take a look at that.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a really good point. I'm trying to think of, and all right, I don't think there's anything else I want to talk about that. So then there's total payroll cost reports. This I think is a lovely report. This is something that I look at every single week because I have a client who wants to see the total cost of her payroll because she wants to know how much cash she's going to need to have on hand, not only to pay the net payroll, but also to pay any of the taxes that are coming up. So, and so I send her a report every week or an email that has basically this included. It shows here's your bank balance before payroll, here's the total cost of that payroll, here's the total cost of any vendor payments that are going out this week, here's the bank balance, and then basically I add the wage, the total payroll cost, and any of her vendor bills that are being paid, and say this is the total cash needed. It's really wonderful because she's very lucky that she has plenty to cover it every week. But this total payroll cost, I think, is a really lovely tool to help manage cash flow and to just make sure that you have that money on hand to make sure those taxes are paid in a timely fashion. So I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, so this report is just subtotaled by pay type. It's going to give you total company contributions as well. So you can see the total pay. It's going to say here's paycheck wages, non-paycheck wages. Those may be reimbursements of some sort. Oh no, you can have reimbursements here. I'm not sure what non-paycheck wages mean. Maybe it's commissions, bonuses.
Yeah, it doesn't sound legitimate, but I'm sure there's a reason.
I know. And then any reimbursements that you may have, and then it's going to show you, it's going to summarize all of the company contributions. So this may be 401k matching, this, as you can see here, this is Blue Cross Blue Shield, so insurance. It's going to have the total for the employer taxes, and again, it's going to summarize it by each one and give you the subtotal for each one of those sections, and then give you the total cost at the bottom. There is a workers' compensation report. So this is going to be used for workers' comp compliance. This report can be used if you're using, like, I don't have any clients who are tracking workers' comp class. Maybe I have one. I do have one. And so you have to get your comp code, usually from your insurance. You can talk to your comp insurance agent and get those comp codes for the type of work that they're doing. If you add that workers' comp class to each employee record, and you're going to do that, if we go into, you're not going to do that through payroll settings. You're going to enter the comp codes directly into the employee when you set up the employee. So if we go over here to our employees and we click on Liz Mason, right? We can set up over here under employment, we can set up whatever her comp class, her code is. We're not tracking it here, so I'm probably not gonna be able to show that report. But this, you'll need to verify, like I said, verify those worker comp codes with your client, with your insurance company. And then if you go to the left nav and you go to reports and we go all the way down to payroll again, we can see we have this workers' comp report, and this is not going to have any data in it because we don't have any comp codes set up, but that's where you would go. So if we look at, last year, we don't have anything set up, but you can see for each code, here was the wages paid, any tips, the employee taxes, and the total wages paid. But this is, if you did have data, this is what it would show, right? I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. Really don't
Yeah, no,
know.
I think that's it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a lot like class tracking, where it's just an additional field. It's relevant for
yeah,
your insurance carrier when they come to audit
yeah, and
every 2 years.
exactly. Or, and it's never, the only reason I have the one client that's using it is because she is using that AP Indigo, the workers' comp that's integrated with QBO, and
Oh
it's a
yeah.
pay-as-you-go situation. That's the only one. Everybody
Yeah, and the
else,
other thing, oh, go ahead.
or no, I was going to say, all of my other clients, they have their workers' comp that they pay outside of
Yeah.
QBO. It's not a pay-as-you-go, and they do the comp audit every year. And the comp auditor sends here's what I need, here's the reports I need for the period I need the 941s, blah blah blah, and then that's all. And you can get all of the reports directly from QuickBooks Online that they need. So, but it's
That's
handy.
exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. Okay. Oh,
This
see.
is this is actually not such a common scenario. Not because, I mean, everyone's got workers' comp, but because doing the reporting native within QBO is less common than just using payroll summary. And like many businesses, all the team members are under the same category, or
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And if you're not doing the pay as you go through QBO, I don't think there's any reason to do this.
right.
You don't need it because it doesn't make the comp audit go any faster. Because because I still have to do a comp audit and I still have to send the reports, even if I was tracking this. Anyway, the last thing I want to say about this is you can edit the date range. You can, drill down to see the employees by code and select the wages paid. So there's some customization that you can do with this. You can also export to Excel or PDF. So we're going to talk a little bit more about reports, end of period activities. Hold on. And reports after processing, after payroll. So looking at this, there's some other types of, there's other reports that we have. There are four, I think there's more than four, as you can see from that section, but there's
Yeah,
four
there's like types of reports.
yeah, there's payroll details, there's payroll summary. Um, I think these are four core reports that are used most often. I would say payroll details. This is going to list the paychecks that have been created. If they include a detailed breakdown of the amounts of all the wages, the taxes and deductions. We've already seen the payroll summary report. This shows the paychecks that have been created along with the total for all the wages, taxes, and deductions. There's a payroll deductions and contributions report. This is going to show the total amount of employee deductions and the company contributions that have been incurred. And then there's a payroll tax liability report that shows the total amount of tax by tax type, as well as the amount of tax owed and how much that has been paid for that period of time. And just looking at these really quickly, I just want to show you each one of these. I'm just going to search so I don't have to scroll. I want to look at my payroll detail. If I look at my payroll details, you can see it's just going to say, hey, this is all by pay date. It's going to show the name. If we look at last year, right, we've got everybody that was paid, whether they are still there or not. This is going to show by pay period. It's breaking it down because it's in detail. So on this day, Greg was paid. On this day, Liz was paid. It's going to show all of the details and then the total cost for that employee. If we go to our payroll deductions, right? We go to our payroll deductions and contributions report. This is going to show exactly that. What are all of, and I don't think they have any deductions. So here's health insurance. There's one health insurance. We can drill down into this and see exactly what it is and who paid it, right? So there's only that one deduction. If we look at our tax liability, our payroll tax liability report, and we look at last year, You can see it's going to give you each tax type over here, the tax amount, the total is paid, which is 0 last year.
A little behind.
And then the total tax owed. The good thing is it's not a lot, so
No,
hopefully they
that's true.
wouldn't be incurring too many penalties or interest, too much
Well,
penalties
no,
or
it is the
interest.
state of California, so they'll pay thousands in penalties, but they
Right?
should get that $3.99 paid off soon.
I'm not going to go over this entire slide. This is just a really handy tool for you to take a look at later. But it's a really important, I think it's really important to review some of those key payroll accounts and validate that payroll reflects the amounts that the employee and the employer intended, what they originally envisioned to pay and withhold. And so when you're saying, okay, I want to look at workers, employee compensation, these are, some of the, which payroll accounts that you want to look at. Okay. So again, you guys can take a look at this later. I'm not going through each one of these. Understanding balances. So the balance sheet is going to show any of the payroll liabilities and could also include any sub-accounts. So you can see in this particular situation, they have a parent payroll liability account and they have a different sub-account for each type of liability that they owe. They have their, the unemployment and the employee training tax. There is a Connecticut income tax. There's dental insurance, federal withholding, federal, 941 federal unemployment. And so then you also have, some of the other ones, medical insurance, retirement plans. I like to have, I'm fine having just a payroll liabilities account because I can go look at the type and look at different detail reports, but some people like to see all of this separated out. So you
Yeah,
can,
I'm on that side of the equation, which is interesting. I thought it would be the other way around.
with that you like the detail?
Yeah, because not like most of the time, it doesn't even matter. It's all in one bucket, and you can run reports to
Yeah.
figure out what's right. But it's just easier to reconcile if you know there's an issue or some growing liability that isn't getting depleted, then you can target, oh, it's health insurance or.
Yeah, and that's where if it's somebody that doesn't have any deductions, they're not offering benefits, they don't provide health insurance, they don't have any of those deductions or company contributions, I tend to let's just dump it all to payroll liabilities because it's really just state withholding, state unemployment, federal unemployment, federal, you know what I mean? It's pretty
Yeah,
easy. But when you have more complex payroll, I do agree with you. I would rather see it detailed out like this.
right.
Profit and loss. So the P&L is going to show wages, employer paid taxes, any benefits, and then any other payroll expenses. Maybe, I mean, I don't even know what other payroll expenses would be. You have wages, taxes, and benefits.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the amount you pay to the payroll service, I
Yeah,
suppose, would be
possibly.
another payroll
Yeah,
service.
but I don't like to really include that. I have that kind of separate,
Uh-huh.
as a separate line item, but whatever. So then this is another like really big long slide. It's a really great reference point for you to take back and look at later. So I'm not going to read every word on the slide. I'm assuming everybody is an adult, and if they need this, they'll go look at it later. But the point of it is, once payroll is processed, it's a best practice. Like Bryce said, if there's a problem with any of those liabilities, it's a best practice to go through and reconcile those payroll accounts with the GL. There's a few steps that are involved in the process, but really these are all the steps and they're just listed here. You want to make sure that all of that is set up. I had one client who, when they set up a payroll, they had an employee take out a 401k loan and it was set up completely incorrectly, and I was not seeing it on the balance sheet for whatever reason, and I didn't set the employee up. And so finally the client came back and said, hey, this guy is saying that there's no payments being made on his loan. So we went through and reviewed the setup and reviewed the balance sheet, and sure enough, and the P&L, and sure enough, that's what happened. It was just dumped into a separate account. So there's also, really quickly, I want to show you, there is a report that is called retirement plans. So this is really helpful because this is what I was looking at to make the payments, and there is none, but it's called retirement plans report, and it will show you the employee deduction as well as the company contribution. That's the report that I was using to make the payments, and loan 401k loan payments don't show up on that. So what I had to do was create a customized report that showed me all of those payroll liabilities that were related to not only employee contribution or company contributions and employee deductions, but also the loan repayment. All right, sorry, and the last thing I want to say about this slide is this is just the rest of the reconciliation steps for reconciling payroll. I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
And I was just going to say, it happens all the time that whether it's something where the employer is withholding a certain portion of health insurance, or has, I've got several clients, I don't know why this is so common, but garnishments of some sort, those have to go to a liability account when you set up payroll.
Yeah.
And what can happen is that just becomes a growing, the employer fails to deduct from that liability account. Instead, they just write it as an expense to the health insurance carrier,
Yes.
insurance provider, whatever. And that's normal. So we just want to highlight that if you see liability balances growing over time, payroll liabilities, you may want to look and make sure that those are getting relieved regularly.
Yeah.
It is not uncommon as I'm preparing tax returns to just flush an entire year of growing payroll liabilities as a reduction in expense, so that the net true employer cost is reflected.
Right.
That was a bit of a rabbit hole, but
no, I know, but it's important. That's
flashpoint for me this time of
at the
year.
beginning of this, there's so much that's kind of can be involved in payroll. It's a lot to talk about. You can print. I already mentioned that you can favorite those reports. When you run the report, obviously that share, you can export it to Excel, or you can, it says printer friendly. So you can print these reports, you can export them as a PDF, you can do whatever you need to. One thing that I do want to mention when it comes to garnishments, like child support, is whereas QBOP, QuickBooks Online Payroll, will automatically pay state, federal, and with the upper tiers of payroll subscription, local taxes, it will not pay any garnishments. Those payments have to be made outside of QuickBooks Online. So what I do for my clients who have those garnishments, I have them set up to go get paid because it's the same amount every week, right? And if they have two that are going to the same court, I have one client who has an employee who has two garnishments, same county, same court, just two different case numbers. I send those as two different payments out of the bank. They're automatic weekly payments, so that I don't have to worry about making those payments. They automatically go out. The other thing that I do is for every specific garnishment, I create a specific garnishment liability account for that employee, so that I can make sure that those garnishment payments are being made. Because if I see a balance in that garnishment account, that is kind of a panic. And it means that child support payment and then didn't get made, and the employee could get in trouble for that. And I do not want that to happen. So I just want to mention that. So the other thing is that QuickBooks Online, I mentioned just a minute ago, will automatically do payments. They'll automatically do filings. If you want to view any of those archived filings, you can go to payroll tax, and this is the payments. So we obviously, this is
Hopefully
a lot.
you did not see this.
But if you scroll down here, you can see your prior, your tax payment history. And then if we go to our filings and we scroll down, we can see archived forms and filings. This is where if you have one of those comp audits, or you need to, and we have no file, we've never filed taxes for this account because it's a demo account. But if you need to pull up, a previous quarter or current quarter 941 or whatever report, you can always go to that place that I just showed you and pull those archived reports. Paying taxes, adjusting tax deposits, and filing forms. every employer is required by law to file payroll and employee tax forms at regular intervals on a regular schedule. Some reports are quarterly, some annual. Here in the state of Michigan, I have some employees that pay their tax, prefer to pay their tax monthly. And so it can be a little challenging. So QBOP does that for you. So it makes that tax and form filing side of running the business really easy. So once you set up the bank connection and you confirm the company and the owner identities, basically Intuit takes over managing and paying the payroll taxes and doing the form filings. It is full service. It is standard with QBO payroll with the elite and what is it? It's core, premium, and elite are the three
Yes, that's
subscription
correct.
levels.
And
So it comes
full
standard.
service,
Huh?
just to define full service, the payroll service is remitting the tax and filing the tax returns on your behalf.
Yes, exactly. So they ensure that all of the payroll taxes and form filings for state and federal are automatically filed unless a user goes in and says, no, it's default for QBOP to make the payments and do the form filings. If you want, you can go in and uncheck that, but you would have to remember to, click the button and make those and do those filings. So the payroll tax liability report is going to show the tax liability. I showed you this. The tax is paid and the tax is still owed for any selected date range. And what's really kind of cool is you'll get an email reminder before any tax payments and filings are made. So you have time to double check any details. It's going to reduce the amount of time and the errors found when processing payrolls. Like I said, you can turn those off if you want to. Core, Premium, and Elite will also prepare and physically mail W-2s and 1099s if you need to directly to employees and contractors at the end of the year. And then the Payroll Elite includes that tax penalty protection if you need to. I'm going to put in there's a link, Bryce, I'm gonna send it to you. You can copy and paste it and put it in the chat. That just gives a little bit more information about those filings. So if you're going to e-file, most of the quarterly tax forms can be submitted electronically. You can e-file your 941 through QBO payroll, the QBOP payroll account. If it's active for federal electronic services, you're gonna fill out all of those forms, giving Intuit permission to do that. And remember, you're gonna get a notice from the state, and it's like Network Solutions Payment. What is it? Network Solutions Inc.
It's Computing Resources Inc.
Computing Resources Inc. That's right. You'll get a notice once you fill out all of the e-file forms from your state saying, hey, we just want to verify that you've given Computing Resources Inc. Permission to do this, and don't panic. That's really Intuit.
Sounds very much danger, Will Robinson. I don't know.
Yeah.
Computing
Yeah.
is the term that triggers
It's
me.
very, yeah. So you can still file your state unemployment and your state withholding forms. And there is a few states, and I don't know which ones, where e-filing is not available, but QBO is going to give you basically a signature ready form that you can print, or at least a worksheet to work from to fill out the official form to do that. If you're using the automated taxes and forms, you cannot choose the date. You can't pick it because Intuit's going to automatically do that, right? And it doesn't do it like a week before. It's not like if you are quarterly, Intuit is not, it's not holding the money. It's not taking the money. It is a direct payment from your account to the state or the federal government. It's not holding on to it. It doesn't take it out. It pays it when it's due. So if you have to be able to select the payment or the filing date, you'll need to go in and turn off the automated taxes and forms. So Can you use e-services if you turn off automated taxes? Absolutely, you can still e-file and e-pay. You just have to click the button to do so. And then if I mentioned before, if the state doesn't support e-filing, QBOP is going to give you the information that you need to complete any of those returns. So if you want to turn off the automated taxes, we're going to go to our gear icon, and then we're going to go to Payroll Settings, and then this is where we can do that, right? So it's going to be, we don't want auto payroll. This is where, I think it's here. Oh yeah, payroll taxes forms. Yeah, so you're going to do it here and turn that off. I just leave it. I would just just leave it on because to me that's the whole point of moving to QBOP is it just does it for you. I have probably 8 clients that are using QuickBooks Online Payroll and not one of them has that turned off.
Right.
It just makes it easy. So in QBOP, you can only pay the amount of tax that is defined by the liability that is listed in the payroll tax center. So if you need to add a penalty, we have to figure out a way to make a payment of the current liability plus the penalty. So the way that we're going to do that is we have to first turn the automated taxes and forms setting is turned off, and then we have to navigate to the payroll tax tab in the taxes center, select pay in the action column of that payment to make. And then the second step here is in QBOP. Like I said, you can only pay the amount that is defined by the liability listed in the payroll tax center. So if you have to pay the penalty, we have to do, you're going to make sure it's automated is turned off, right? Then you're going to go make the payment, and then you're going to say make the payment myself, right, when you pay it. So you can say pay electronically or make payment myself. You want to choose make payment myself. You're going to go to your state's website. For the state of Michigan, it's MTO website, or EFTPS, whatever. You're going to go to wherever you need to make that tax payment, including the additional penalty and any interest. And so now what we need to do is we need to account for the payment of the penalty and interest in QuickBooks. And the next slide is how we're going to do that. So you're going to manually pay it. You're going to say, I'm going to make the payment myself. You're going to tell QuickBooks, I'm not going to have you pay electronically. You're going to make the payment yourself. And then to record the tax or interest, you can't add penalties or interest to the tax liability payment, so we have to enter it as a separate expense transaction. So you're going to tell QuickBooks Online, I'm making the penalty or interest, I'm making it myself. Then you're going to go into your expense transaction. You're going to put in the payee to whomever, whatever agency the taxes and penalties are owed. And then you'll post them to whatever accounts you have set up for that. You'll put in the payment date, which is going to be the same day that you paid manually through the state's website. And then we have to match it. So now we have 2 transactions, right? We have the $190 of tax and we have the $6 in penalties and interest. So what we do is when we see the $196 come through the bank feed, we need to go in and we need to find a match, and we need to match that one expense to the one withdrawal or the money coming out of the bank to 2 expense transactions in QBO. Now, I would argue that it would be perfectly okay to let Intuit continue to make the and Bryce, correct me if or feel free to disagree and argue with me about this. I think that it would be okay to let QuickBooks make the payment and then go directly to the website and just make the payment for the penalty and interest. What do you think?
Yes, that would be my preference as well.
Yeah, because if you do it this way,
it's about reconciliation.
Yeah, and when you do it, wait, say that again.
It's all about bank reconciliation.
Right. And so if you do it the way that I just explained by turning off automated taxes, now you have to go in and you have to turn the automated taxes and forms back on. The other thing that you can do if the automated taxes and forms is on, is you can contact payroll support and you can ask them to make that adjustment for you down the road so that it is all one transaction. I think it's much easier just to let QBOP make the payment, go directly to the website, pay the penalties and interest, and then match it to 2 transactions. And really quickly, how we would do that is if we go here to our bank feed, you would find that transaction, and then you're going to click Find Match right here. And I'm just choosing any one. And so you can see I only have one, but hopefully, you know, I might be able to find another expense for, you know, $21.50, or maybe I haven't entered it in and I'm going to say, you know, whatever, this is my penalties and interest. You know, I can say, hey, this is my $100 for the tax, and then here's my penalty and interest. And I would match that one transaction in the bank feed to 2 transactions in QBO. I know that's a lot, but if you don't want to mess with that, just contact payroll support and they can make the adjustment for you. Some year-end activities. This is just a year-end checklist. Again, it's pretty simple. You just want to make sure that you review any update any employee information. You want to make sure that if you have employees that are no longer with you, you have their current contact information so that you can get their W-2s to them. You want to run your final payroll, check any federal and state tax rate notices. Those usually come right at the end of the year, or, you know, if you're in Michigan, you get that a little bit late. You get it sometime in January after you've already processed payroll, which is super fun. To print, if you want to print any electronically filed W-2 forms, you're going to go into your taxes center. You're going to select that payroll tax tab. Under forms, you're going to select the year, and I'll just do that for you. If we go over here to payroll tax, and we look at any filings, we can look at annual forms, and this is where we can say, hey, here's our printable copies, and we can just print out W-2s here or our employee copies here. A separate tab is going to open up and there'll be PDF form, and you can either print them as hard copies or you can save them as PDFs. This is just a list of where the different copies of W-2s go. I'm not going to go through all of this. You can review this later. If you, you know, you'll still need to print and distribute if you're not using the automated forms, but Intuit will mail out. If you have automated taxes turned on, they're going to mail out the W-2s for you, so you don't have to worry about that. And then you can go ahead and you can print those. Also, employees can access their W-2s through workforce.intuit.com. But sometimes if they can't access it, you may have to print it for them, and that's just how you're going to do that. There are some other reports that we can look at. We have payroll profitability. So this, their payroll costs, they're pretty important if you are tracking project costing or job costing. And until recently, for years with QBO, we had to do all these workarounds to get payroll into a project report. But we really don't have to do that anymore, because if you just use the built-in time, either the single time activity or the weekly timesheet, you can enter in the time for the employees. And when you set up the employee, you want to make sure that you say that you are tracking time. So if we go into payroll and we go to employees, we can tell QuickBooks that we track time for payroll. And so with QuickBooks Online Payroll enabled, when you are using this, and you can use QuickBooks Time, any time that is assigned to the, we can see we've assigned it to the customer. This is our employee, this is the pay period or the week, and we can put in all the hours that we worked. If we want, we can mark the time billable so that when an invoice is created for this Laurel customer project X, the time can get pulled into the invoice. So when we enter the time this way, and we've told QBO we track time for payroll, we can say, hey, all of the taxes and all of the wages are going to show up on a project report, and it's pretty amazing. I mentioned QB Time. If you were using Premium and Elite, you have QuickBooks Time, a QuickBooks Time subscription included with that subscription for QBO Payroll. You can use QuickBooks Time with Essentials or even Simple Start, I believe, but I don't have anybody using QuickBooks Time right. I have one client using QuickBooks Time, even though they have Premium and Elite. I have one client who has QBO Premium, and they just enter the time using QBO. We just create what are called time tracker only users, and they can go in and do that. But you can also use QuickBooks Time, and again, it's included with Premium and Elite. So the payroll costs are going to be, if you're using the Project Center, only after payroll is processed. So if I'm doing, if I need to know what my costs are and I only pay every 2 weeks and I haven't run payroll yet, and this project just started a week ago, then I'm not going to see any of those costs that are associated with payroll. So you have to run the payroll, and then you'll be able to see in the Project Center, you'll be able to see all of the total costs, including payroll, and it will calculate how much of the employer taxes, which is really important. If you're not using projects and you're still using the time and you're assigning the time to a customer or a sub-customer, you can pull a P&L by customer and look at it that way as well. So this is what it looks like here. We've got our total payroll expenses, and again, that includes wages and taxes and any other employee contribution or employer contributions that have been assigned when that employee put the time in and assigned it to this project. This is huge. So for somebody who grew up with a builder, I'm a builder's daughter, and I've worked with a lot of contractors over time. This is amazing for project tracking. And what's really cool is I have a couple government contractors, and they need to see exactly how much time was assigned to each one of these government projects. And so this is really, really amazing because they can pull those reports very quickly and see them. Anything else that I feel like I'm talking way too fast? But am I?
No, I was just going to say about QuickBooks Time. I'll just put a link in the chat about what dimensions that can add.
Okay, cool. And then you can also, this is just a payroll customer, a sub-customer reporting. This is a P&L. So where we saw it just a moment ago, right, on this screen, we saw those costs in the Project Center. Looking at this report, this is showing us the same thing. It's just different view. So you may or may not have projects turned on. If you're not turning on projects, that's cool because you can look at a P&L by customer and you can see exactly what those wages are. Any accounting preferences? I kind of mentioned this. I'll just go through this. If we go up here to our payroll settings, you want to make sure that you've done your general tax, right? And this is just giving you information, making sure the address is correct. You want to make sure that we go into the accounting preferences here. And this is where I mentioned that you're going to set up the bank account. You want to make sure that you choose the right bank account. So this isn't where you're going to change the direct deposit. This is, you're just saying when I process payroll, I want these checks posted to this bank account. These are the wage accounts, the employer tax expense accounts. We have the tax liabilities. You can see if we enter this, we can choose, I would have all of the accounts set up before you go do this so that they're there to choose from. And then you can say all of the employer taxes are posted to one expense account, or again, I post them to different expense accounts, or their different types of taxes get posted to different accounts here. Trying to think. Oh, other liabilities and assets. So here's the thing: is any kind of deduction into QuickBooks Online Payroll is going to, it requires a liability. So there are certain situations. I have a client who he has a phone reimbursement. He has an employee who I don't know if he purchased the phone for him or if he has his service on the company payroll or the company telephone, but he has a deduction. And so really what I want to do is I would like to select an expense account to reduce the amount of expense that the employer is paying, but I cannot do that. I have to put in a liability, and so for that deduction. And so usually every quarter I go in and just do a journal entry and clear out the liability and offset it to the expense account. But that hopefully is going to change soon. But this is where you are going to set up any of the accounts for any liabilities, assets, deductions, contributions, things like that. Again, you can add deductions for health insurance, retirement plan, flexible spending, HSA, any other deductions like I mentioned, which would be that phone deduction. I just went through this where you can set up those different wage expense accounts. We kind of covered that. We did the class tracking. We edited the wage and expense accounts. So this is just giving you a step-by-step instruction, the click path to do all of that. Again, same here. And then adjusting some of your tax settings. So if you have a new tax rate, so every year, you're going to get your unemployment rate or your adjusted unemployment rate from the state, you can go into, your gear icon, payroll settings, and then you're going to choose your state tax. And then for that unemployment rate, you would put in the new rate and the effective date and then say, okay. Federal tax schedule, if you, your tax, how often you pay your 941 tax is going to be determined by the amount, how large your payroll is. So it may be quarterly, it may be monthly, it may be every time you run a payroll. So for this particular client, they are a quarterly depositor. If that changes, and you'll get a notice, or you can just, usually you get a notice, you can go ahead and you can choose change or add a new schedule. And that's where you're going to do that. And then any federal form preferences. There are situations where you may have a designated third party to file the tax forms. In these cases, that third party designee and a paid preparer information can be added. I don't have anybody that is using any of these. So, but you can go in and say, hey, this person can, discuss those federal forms with the IRS by completing this section. Banking and direct deposit. So the bank account information and the principal officer address. So when you set up your direct deposit or you have to make any changes, you're gonna make sure that you set up the bank account in the chart of accounts first. And so the payroll bank account must be in the chart of accounts before you can do any of the payroll, because you have to assign that account, right? If you change the account, you have to make sure that you check for any pending tax payments and payroll transactions. You will not be able to change it if there are any payments that are pending or any payroll transactions that are pending. And first we want to go and change the bank account with QuickBooks Online Payroll Services, and then change the bank account in the accounting preferences, which I just told you. So if we want to add a new bank account, we're going to go into the chart of accounts to do that. And then you want to, check for any of those pending payments or any of those payroll changes or checks, and then to change the bank account for direct deposit. We're going to our gear icon. We're going to payroll settings. We want to scroll down to bank accounts. Okay, so the accounting preferences, this is just telling QuickBooks where to post it. So if you actually change the direct deposit, the bank account for direct deposit, you're going to want to click here for bank accounts, and this is where you're going to do that. I don't have direct deposit set up, but just know that you first have to do it here in bank accounts. You cannot have any pending tax payments or pending checks. And then you're going to want to go here to accounting preferences and change it here to the new checking account. Okay, any questions, or am I forgetting anything about that?
Nope.
Okay. There is also as you grow, or there may be differences to, you might need to increase the direct deposit limit, and you might need to change your funding time. If you need to see what your direct deposit limit is, you can go, oh, I don't think it's going to show us because
Right, we haven't
we don't
processed.
have it set up. Yeah, we don't have direct deposit set up. So anyway, if you're going to do that, you're going to go to your gear icon, again, payroll settings. You're going to go to the pencil icon. There's going to be one next to direct deposit, and you're going to edit that. And then you'll select the link. You can see there's a link here that says request a higher limit. It's going to show you what your funding limits are. If you are on 5-day, usually that means there is you may
Kind
have
of a penalty box.
Huh?
It's kind of a penalty box.
Yeah, it really is, and it's going to be for maybe someone who has NSF to payroll in the past. It's for somebody, a business that may not have the best credit. And same day is only for, I think, premium and elite. I think core, everything else is 24 hours. I still do it 2 days. If the payroll is Friday, I still make my clients give me the hour, give me the hours beforehand. But it depends on the subscription level or circumstances. So premium and elite have the same day, and so that means that if you forget or you just want to do same day, it doesn't matter. I have had clients who just completely forgotten. And the great thing is you have until 7 a.m. Pacific time on the day of payroll. So if you're paying your employees on Friday and you just forget, as long as you process the payroll by 7 a.m. that day, they will be paid that same day. The next day is 24 hours. This is set up for everybody has 24 hours, so core, premium, and elite. And then 5 days, so the workers are paid 5 days after the payroll is sent, which means you have to have payroll done 5 business days before the pay date. So banks are sometimes going to impose a funding time of 5 banking days to businesses who have had payments failed due to NSF. Intuit may also put that 5-day funding time, and so because of credit, so it's in place until the business can rebuild that credit. Clients or users, I should say, that are in the situation can request a faster funding time online. To do this, you would need to upload 6 months of their most recent bank statements. And then if you get that changed, you may be able to also get the direct deposit amount listed, total lifted too, or resolved, or lifted, increased is what I'm trying to say. Gosh, I'm going to get those words out. So yeah. So if you have a situation where NSF payroll, it happens. I just used the wrong bank account to make a payment to someone the other day, and it came back, and I was horrified, and I had to have them send me another invoice so that I could pay them, and it was awful. I had the money, just not in that account. So if you have an NSF situation, what is going to happen here? What happens is when you run payroll, the money is pulled out of the bank account for the direct deposit and the payroll taxes when it's due. If one of the transactions, either for direct deposit or tax payment, is returned due to an issue with the bank account, the account is put on hold, and that's going to lead to a balance being due. When an NSF hold happens, QBO is going to send an email to the principal officer or the primary principal listed on the QBOP account. It's going to have one of the following messages: important, direct deposit payment unsuccessful, urgent issues with payroll account, or it's going to say QuickBooks Payroll Services account required, payment request for failed payroll debit, or it will say QuickBooks Payroll Services action required, partial payment received. If you can't find the email, you can contact QBOP support to check the accuracy of the contact information and make sure that the email is being sent to the right account or the right email address. What's going to happen is an automatic attempt to retake the uncollected funds is going to happen. And the email sent to the principal officer contains a code. It's going to start with R and an explanation for why the NSF occurred. If it was rejected due to insufficient funds, it's going to be R01 or uncollected funds. I don't know what uncollected means. I apologize. That's going to be an R09. Another attempt to pull the funds is going to be made. The second attempt is made the same day that the return notice from the bank is received. The payroll service is then put on hold for 5 business days to make sure that that transaction goes through. The employer is also going to receive an email to confirm if the second attempt was successful or not. If the second attempt is successful, you don't have to do anything else. The hold is removed, payroll processing can resume just like it had been. It's not always possible to stop the automatic attempt, but you can chat or you can call 866-729-2402 for help and instructions to send a wire transfer or to pay using a service that Intuit uses called VersaPay to pay the balance due faster. This would enable QBOP to remove that 5 business day sooner. If the the second time is successful for another reason, you have to find the email notification. It's going to come from urgent payroll issue at quickbooks.com, and it'll have a subject line that'll include the words wire instructions, and then you'll have to ask your bank to request a wire transfer, or you'll have to use that VersaPay. I think it is always best to do chat support if this happens, or call that 866-729-2402 to request a link to pay with VersaPay. I'm trying to think of anything else. Just try not to NSF your checks. That's why I always do get payroll done on Wednesday so my clients know that on Friday they need X amount of money. So again, if an employee's direct deposit is rejected, it could be for a number of different reasons. Maybe they gave you the wrong account number. Maybe the employer put in the wrong account number. Maybe something happened with QuickBooks. But if it's an employee situation, the employee can call their bank and request a trace. If it is something that happened on the employer end, the employer can request a trace from their bank. You can also contact QBOP support, and they can contact the bank to see if the funds are going to post or if they're going to be returned. If for whatever reason the funds you're unable to retrieve and send the original direct deposit through, the other 3 options that I just mentioned, you may have to do a new direct deposit information from the employee and reprocess the paycheck in question. One thing to remember here is you may not know what the employee's bank has decided to do with the direct deposit until after payday. So I always say, you know what, let's just hold on, let's see what happens, give it a day, and then if you still don't have it, we can figure it out. Talking a little bit about paid and unpaid time off policies. Intuit QBOP has sick, vacation, PTO, and unpaid time off. Instead of offering separate sick or vacation time, a lot of employers choose just a generic PTO or paid time off. Unpaid time off, this is going to accrue based on the accrual frequency entered. The following types of pay trigger accrual of paid time off: unpaid time off, sick pay, vacation pay, holiday pay. It's going to be hourly pay, salary, overtime, double time, commission, and bonus. Those are all going to trigger time off accruals. And for each one of the policies, you can choose how you want employees to accrue their paid time off, sick pay, vacation, whatever it is. Employees, this is what's really important to remember about how QBOP does time off, is their time off balance is automatically going to carry over into the new calendar year. There's no option to prevent that carryover. So if you are an employer that has a use it or lose it policy, you need to change that current balance at the beginning of whenever it resets, whether it's the employee's hire date or the beginning of each year. This is just recapping how they can earn that time off. Employers can view the time off balances on the most recent paycheck detail. There is a vacation and leave report, and by viewing the employee's time off pay policies directly in the employee record. Trying to think of what else. You can track employee payroll accrual. And there's just some questions that you need to think about or ask yourself or talk to your accounting professional is how is vacation pay going to accrue? Is it going to be accrued by hours worked or by time period? Or are there any laws in place that require sick pay policies and time off? This is just giving you how the accrual rates are calculated. Again, you know, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but you can kind of, this is a good reference slide again. It could be the beginning of the year, it could be however many hours worked, or it could be their hire date anniversary. My clients who do offer PTO make it very easy, and it's the beginning of the year, and that makes it much easier. This is just showing the accrual rates. I'm not going to read all those numbers to you. But that's for reference if you need to take a look at that. So my slide notes say that more employers are adopting unlimited time off policies, and I do not, out of 48 clients, I don't have one of them who has that. So I don't know who's adopting unlimited time off policies. But I know that some states with sick leave laws, they include guidelines on how to apply the law when employers offered this unlimited time off. So QBOP has offered an unlimited as an accrual frequency option to allow those companies with these policies to reflect that accrual type on pay stubs. So when you select this option, the available hours in pay stubs will show unlimited instead of the actual hours available. This frequency is going to allow you to grant an infinite amount of time off, so there's no need to track accrual of time off hours. Or, but I've no one who has done that. This is just showing how to set up different time off. I'll just do this really quickly, going into our payroll and going into our employees. We'll do Greg, and we can say, you know, look into his pay, right? And it's going to say, how often do you pay him? And we can say, how much do you pay him? And then we can set up, he has no unpaid time off. So I can say, you know what, he gets, you know, I can add a new one, or I can say he gets, you know, 1/10 of an hour with a max of 20 hours. So I'm not going to give him any, but this is where you can set that, get that set up. He's got sick pay, he's got vacation set up. So he doesn't have PTO or unpaid time off, but he does have 40 hours of sick pay if he wants, and 175.5 hours of vacation. And you can see it doesn't, it rolls over. So unless you are adjusting this balance at the end of every year, then it will just keep rolling over, and they'll have eventually almost virtually unlimited time. I just showed you how to do that. You can set up that additional pay type. You're going to click additional pay types. You're going to set up that vacation pay or that unpaid time off. And then any deductions or contributions. So garnishments, any deduction, you have to have your employee sign off on those deductions. They have to say, yes, they're giving you permission. This might be a uniform expense, again, that phone deduction that I talked about. But if it is a garnishment, alimony, child support, bankruptcy, whatever, you do not need permission because it is court ordered. And then there's also contributions. This may be employee covered insurance, 401k, any other benefits you might have. And again, I mentioned this before because you want to make sure that these garnishments get paid. You cannot make the payments directly through QBO. You record the payments that have been made outside of QBO so that you reduce the liability. I am a big fan of when I'm adding that new deduction, the description. I always put the employee's last name, and I put the case number if it for whatever the court order that I have. And so I want a separate, I don't want just blanket child support. I want the client to be able to take the pay stubs or look at it and know exactly what it is. It also makes it much easier when you're looking at paycheck detail reports. If everybody says child support, I want to know specifically, right, what it is. And then it's just going to say how much is requested. And then you'll find all of this for garnishments. You'll see it all on the court ordered paper. I have found that they're usually the courts, if you have any questions, if you just call the number, they're more than happy to walk you through setting this up. So the garnishment also becomes part of those payroll reports. As I mentioned, this type is child support. And this is where, when I'm looking at these reports, the description, I don't want it just to be child support. I want to see the case number. I want to see the employee's name and the case number so I know exactly which garnishment we're looking at and we're talking about. Because if I see this says maybe Rob, case number 1234, and I click into this number here for plan total and I see somebody else's name, that means that maybe I might have screwed up, or somebody might have screwed up when they set up the garnishment, and somebody's getting, maybe the court's getting overpaid for something. So it makes it it's a lot easier to put as much detail as you can when you're setting up the garnishments. Then we have maybe employer deductions as well as company contributions to maybe insurance benefits, 401k. So your plan administrator is going to let you know what plan they have chosen, what their contribution is, as well as what the company contribution is going to be. And then you can just basically pull that information up and enter it all in here. Usually, this says Simply Insured. I think that's the company that Intuit is working with, but it may be Blue Cross. It could be whatever, I don't know what they have in California in here.
Kaiser.
Huh?
We have a lot of Kaiser.
Kaiser, that's right. Like Kaiser Sose from Unusual Suspects. Okay, and then you're just going to put in the employee deduction as well as the company. If there's any annual maximum, you can enter this in here. And then you're going to choose whether it is, before you do it, you're going to say like if it's pre-tax or taxable. And that's one of the questions when you do the setup. Is it pre or post-tax? And then when you pay the garnishment, like I mentioned, you have to do this manually. So you're going to enter the expense transaction in. For me, the way I do it is I set up the payroll description, I set it up for the employee, then I go to the client's bank if I have access, or I tell the client they need to do this. They set up a recurring payment that goes out directly through their bank bill pay with a memo that has the same description that I used for the garnishment description in QBO. And then the next thing that I do is I make this expense recurring. So I make it a recurring weekly expense so that when the transaction goes out through the bank bill pay and comes in through the bank feed, it always has something to which I can match it in QBO. So there's that. Intuit now allows employers to, it is Simply Insured, I guess right there, can offer various insurance plan, health, dental, vision. If you want any information about this, I don't want to make this a sales thing, but because I don't know enough about it to speak about it, I'll be honest. But if you're interested in any of the health insurance that you can get through Intuit Partners, you can go here to workers' comp. You can go to okay, there you go. So you can get a quote. If you already have a comp policy, maybe you already are working through AP Indigo, you can connect that policy. You can also look at any of the benefits and you can try to connect your benefit plan. You can find a plan. You could also maybe find a 401k, very affordable 401k. And then there is also this section that is an HR advisory. There's different plans that you can have. So when we want to set up that health insurance deduction, we're going to go into that employee record, and we want to add again that deduction or that contribution. I kind of already showed that a couple slides ago. It's very similar to you know, a 401k match or whatever. This is just the workers' comp thing that we were talking about, and again, it is AP Indigo. You can pick a policy if you want. You can set that up using that workers' comp tab. This is just talking about like what is workers' comp insurance. It is protects employers from any financial risk if an employee you know, gets hurt. You can get comp insurance. You can do it through the comp tab in Payroll. You can do it outside of QuickBooks. It is up to you. I know that North Dakota, Ohio, Washington, and Wyoming require that you get the comp directly from the states, but you can go to the state for workers' comp, or you can get it through a private insurance. So there is an end-to-end QBO solution I mentioned, that's AP Indigo, and then I mentioned to set up, you're going to go to that workers' comp tab. Retirement plan deductions, after tax Roth deductions. This is a Roth 401k that is going to combine the features of a traditional 401k with those of a Roth IRA. I'm not an expert on retirement plans, but Roth 401k accounts are subject to the same contributions as regular 401k plans. Roth contributions are made with after tax dollars, just like a Roth IRA. And then you can go ahead and, you know, this is one of those things where if you're using a 401k and a Roth 401k deduction in the same calendar year for an individual, the combined deduction of both items can't exceed the annual 401k limit in a given year. So you can find, there's a link here that you can find about contribution limits.
And I put that in the chat since it's not actually a link that you can see.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're setting up, you're basically going to go to the employee record to set up any of these deductions or contributions, and you're just going to choose, just so that you guys can see, if I go here to my employees and I choose Greg again, and I go to, you know, hey, I can do the deductions. I can add those deductions if I need to. You know, you're just gonna click add edit deductions. That's where you're gonna do that. Termination policies. We have 15 minutes. I think I have about 15 slides, so I'm gonna get through these pretty quickly. I'm gonna go through these because I'm just gonna say, you're just going to do the paycheck. You know, like just different types of pay, like severance pay. This is a package that's offered to employees that might be based on their length of service and any salary requirements. There's no requirement. You are not required to offer severance pay. You can make it via just a regular paycheck, an unscheduled, or using what's called a bonus or commission paycheck. It doesn't require, you are not required by the federal government to give payment for time that hasn't been worked, like vacation, sick leave, federal, or other holidays. If you choose to do that, that's just a nice thing that you want to do. Creating a final paycheck, it's just like doing a regular paycheck. You're just going to do a paycheck. And usually for my employees or my clients that are doing a termination check, it's the same schedule. It's just their last check. The only thing that you may want to do is, if you want, you're going to adjust the hours for this time. So if they normally work, if they're salary and they only worked part of that pay period, you're just going to adjust the time So you're going to say, hey, I'm going to reduce the hours by 22 because they didn't work the full, 40 or 80 hours for this section. The other thing that you're going to want to do before you get to this screen is you're going to want to look, if you want, you can, I'm going to get over here, you want to make sure that you verify, are you going to pay out any sick pay or vacation pay? If you are, you're going to look at this screen before you get here, because you want to see how much vacation, and then you're going to enter in the sick pay or the vacation pay. And the memo, you can say like, this is, the memo is this is final paycheck, whatever. It's no different than any other check, except that you might be putting any unused vacation time on it. So once you get all of that entered in, right? So I would go look at their vacation time before I would even start the payroll process, the paycheck process. Just enter in the sick and the vacation time that if you choose to pay them out, if that is part of your employee policy, and then just do a paycheck for them. And that's it. If you're doing tips and gratuities, you can use QBOP. So for any employee who's paid tips, you can add the feature that allows you to add a tip amount to the paycheck. You're going to select the employee names, and then where it says how much do you pay Elizabeth, you're going to choose either paycheck tips or cash tips. And this is going to add another box in the run payroll screen so that you can add tips to that paycheck. So when you're running that payroll, you're going to add the amount of the paycheck tips in that paycheck tips box. So QBOP is going to add it to the paycheck and calculate the taxes correctly. QuickBooks Online Payroll is going to debit a paycheck tips account or a paycheck tips accounts for the actual tip, and credit tax liabilities for the taxes on the tip, and credit cash for the amount paid out. If you do cash tips, this covers situations where the tips were already paid out in cash, either from a drawer or directly to the employee from the customer. At the end of each shift, the employee is going to calculate the total received in cash tips, and those cash tips are going to increase taxable wages, so they only increase the W-2. And the tips themselves aren't going to affect the general ledger. So cash tips can be larger than wages, and QuickBooks Online Payroll won't allow for a negative paycheck. So what it does is it adjusts the taxes, resulting in a net paycheck of 0, and the remaining balance of those employee taxes is going to be caught up on the next available paycheck. Employer taxes are calculated as normal. I will say this, as much as I love QBOP, I usually have my employees do, or my clients use a payroll service so that they don't have to worry about doing the tips. And that's it. I'm gonna stop. Well, I won't stop sharing my screen, but we'll go to QBO, and maybe I'll turn my my camera on. So if you guys have any questions, well, I'll stop sharing. And if you guys have any questions, I think Bryce and I can try and answer those.
Or maybe just a lot of stunned silence.
Right. I mean, it was a lot. It's a fire hose of information when we're talking about payroll.
Yeah, and it was good information. Thank you both very much, especially Stacy. You really got on a roll there, and Bryce, you're right behind her, just backing her up. And if anybody does have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box, or for those of you who are absolutely okay with unmuting, feel free to just step out and ask them.
Yeah. Or if there's no questions, we can let you go. It's up to you.
I think it was the fire hose thing.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, there's a couple of things that I noticed early on when you were talking about setting up your favorites. I think that can be a very usable thing, especially if you're not using everything all the time, but the things that you use the most frequently, being able to just quickly go to that and be able to do your reporting, especially. I thought,
yeah, and you know what that reminds me? I did forget to show one thing, and that is some of those payroll reports. I mentioned that I was going to show you how to customize them because you can't save the customization. So if I go into my reports and I look at my, payroll summary by employee, and I want to look at, last quarter, and I apply that, and I want to customize this and say, you know what, I want to look at total and details. I want to.
Did you
I
want
don't
your
need
Want to
to-
share your
shared?
screen and
I
we'll all
am.
see
I
it with
thought I
you.
was. It decided it didn't want to do that.
Like I can follow along with what you're saying, but
Yeah,
I can
it- Yeah, I clicked it. So now can you see it?
Yep.
yes.
Okay, so if I'm gonna say, you know what, I just want this for one location, right? If I have more than one location, or maybe I want to just look at classes, and we'll just do all locations, and we want to filter this just by class. We want the report to be grouped quarterly. I want to add class, but I don't necessarily need, the hours for whatever reason, and I'm gonna go ahead and run that report. I can't save this customization, even though there's nothing on here. I can't save this report, but what I can do is I can bookmark it. So I'm going to click bookmark, and then I'm going to say that this is my payroll summary by employee, quarterly by class, or whatever I want to call it. And I'm just going to say done. And so now if I'm somewhere else in QuickBooks and I need to access that report very quickly, I've saved it here in my QuickBooks folder, and I can just click on that and it will take me directly to that customized report. So I don't have to go in and do those customizations again. And you can see it saved all of that that I customized. So I can't.
Is that always updated, Stacy?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So it's not just saved at that moment. It's actually saving as you go and make changes anytime you do that
Yes.
tab. Okay.
Yep, and it's set to last quarter, so regardless of what the quarter is, it's always going to look at the previous quarter because that's the date that I set here.
Absolutely.
If I wanted, I could do last pay date, and then I can bookmark this again, and I can say, hey, I want to, bookmark, and I could call this, last pay date. And so now if I navigate someplace else, I can go here and it will remember what I saved.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. That's great. And just a quick message to everybody. If you'll check out all of the links on the right, you'll see that Bryce has been very diligent about putting a lot of these in, including a QuickBooks Advanced test drive or just the QuickBooks Drive, all the way down to IRS retirement topics link, which is pretty interesting and got lots of quick Q&As that I think that a lot of us may have out there as well. And if anybody has any questions, jump in. Go ahead. This is your last opportunity before I tell you what else is coming up this week, because we are absolutely full. Well, actually, the rest of the month. We have a lot coming up. It's true.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Do you have any closing remarks then, since nobody wants to jump out? And then before I tell everybody what else is coming up, and thank you guys very much.
And I ran late, and I apologize for that. I try never to run late, so my apologies.
No worries, no worries. There's a lot of information, and you were able to get it in this amount of time. That's huge. We'll go back and we'll just watch it in slow-mo and review. Review until we get it down. Which brings me to this point. We do have a YouTube channel. It's at the very top of the chat. So if you want to go back in time and see any of our training, you can go right there, and our YouTube channel for NCT SBDC is right there, and it'll give you all of these that Bryce and Stacy have given us before as well. All of them really, really valuable. So any last topics or anything, Bryce? Comments?
No, thank you very much for having us. This is always great.
Right. Well, if you don't mind, then what I would like to do is let everybody know kind of what's coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, check it out. Angela Randolph's coming up, Tracking Finances, Measuring Success, on the 21st, which is today, right now, right after this at 1 o'clock. So if you still have breath in you and you can make it, come back right there and join us for that. How to Write a Top-Notch Website, Part 1 with Ashley Cook on the 22nd. And on the 22nd as well, we have Texas Workforce Commission Decoded with CJ Pettit. And How to Write a Top-Notch Website, Part 2 with Ashley Cook coming up on the 24th. And, of course, Recruit and Retain by CJ Pettit as well, HR Solutions. So this is going to be a huge, huge bunch of information and training for all of you entrepreneurs out there or business owners that just need a little information. We're here to help. And with that, if you want, you can use the QR code up in the top right-hand corner of this slide, and it'll take you straight to the upcoming webinar series that are coming out. And after this, I just want to remind everybody there's a survey coming. Please take 2 minutes to fill it out so we know we're bringing you content that's actually helping you with your small business. That is what we're here to do. And you can always reach us at the SBDC website for registering for webinars or getting contact information of anybody at the SBDC. Schedule an appointment with an advisor or resources for small business owners that you may not have known that you have. So with that, I do want to remind you we are funded, and we'd like to thank the Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Texas SBDC Regional Office, and North Central Texas College for making all of this possible. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Have an
Thanks, you
amazing
guys.
day. Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you. You too.